The Falcons have signed Justin Ellis, a defensive tackle. So welcome into an at-home edition of Falcons Today by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson breaking down this move right before I head out the door because I got a coworkers function to go to. But we are going to get through everything you need to know about Justin Ellis, or AKA Big Jelly, and what this means for the Falcons as they sort of add more depth to their defensive line, because they have made a lot of additions to this defense. And I kind of do wonder, I know I'm getting a little bit conspiracy theory here, but does the signing of Justin Ellis mean something bad about Calais Campbell, right? He has not been at training camp so far. He has been out with a personal issue, and Arthur Smith said they're not going to expect him back really anytime soon-ish. So it does make you wonder if there's maybe a little bit more to that story. But let's first get to know Justin Ellis, a longtime NFL vet, 10-year player, spent a good bulk of his career in Oakland with the Raiders, and then he went over to the Ravens, and then last year he was with the New York Giants. In his NFL career, he's a run-stopping defensive tackle, 1-3 technique type of player. He's not really going to bring a whole lot of pass rush. He only has 1.5 career sacks, but he definitely knows how to eat up the run, how to eat up blockers and free up linebackers, which I'm sure Troy Anderson and Caden Ellis are going to really like having that presence up front. Also makes me wonder with Eddie Goldman not being at practice with a personal issue to start training camp. Is Terry Fontenot a little bit queasy about some of these vets, the big guys up front, not being at camp? I think it's a bit early. It's only July 28th to start really overreacting to some of these players only missing the first few days of training camp with excused absences. But maybe there is more to it that Fontenot knows that we don't know, and that's why Atlanta is going out and getting ahead of this right now and picking up one of the better defensive tackles still on the market. I say better. He's been a really consistent player throughout his NFL career. Hasn't missed a game the last 2 seasons, but he hasn't always been the best. I mean, if we look at his PFF grades from last season, he was downright bad with the Giants, at least if you want to go off PFF's metrics. Overall grade of 31.3. Yikes. That was one of the worst ranking defensive tackles in football, all the way towards the bottom of over 120 qualifying players. Was bad against the run, 30.3, despite me saying he's better against the run than the pass. His pass rush grade was actually a little bit better, 46.7. So Justin Ellis last year did not fare all that well for New York, and hopefully he can have a bounce-back season. I mean, that was a good Giants defense, right? That was a Giants defense that forced Kirk Cousins to check it down on 4th down in the playoffs. But Justin Ellis, like I say, coming over to Atlanta. For contract details, I'm sure it's going to be a 1-year vet minimum type of deal, maybe some incentives in there, but a lot of these guys are just happy to get signed at this point. It's almost August at this state, and I'm sure a lot of players that are free agents that didn't expect to be free agents at this point are happy to get a phone call and happy to be added to someone's roster. I think you could confidently say Justin Ellis will make this 53-man roster. He's a big-name guy, and you don't sign Justin Ellis to develop him, right? That's not the point of signing a 10-year vet. You sign him with a plan, and I think they clearly have a plan in place, which is we have some concerns regarding the depth of our defensive line. They basically added 3 new defensive tackles / linemen, and Calais Campbell, David Onyemata, and I'll toss in Eddie Goldman. I mean, it's a signing that just had like a 17-month delay on it, essentially, because he retired 2 months after signing with the Falcons last year in free agency. So a lot of new guys coming to this defensive line in 2023, and 2 of those 3 faces right there have not been at training camp so far. And like I mentioned earlier, makes you wonder, does Fontenot have some concerns about these guys long term, and he wants to go ahead and just sign someone off the street now before other teams start dealing with, injuries on the defensive line and they start to pick up some of the top guys remaining, and all of a sudden Atlanta's sitting on their hands. They don't have Eddie Goldman or Calais Campbell like they thought they would, and 2-3 weeks go by and the Justin Ellises of free agency are gone at that point. That's kind of an extreme, but it does give you at least a bit of a peek into what it's like being an NFL GM and having to make some of these decisions. But that's the news right there. So if you are looking, by the way, for a Falcons YouTube channel that's going to break down all of training camp and free agency buzz and whatnot, make sure to subscribe. We usually do videos in the Chat Sports studios, but believe it or not, it's Chat Sports Day. The whole office got off today. So no bells and whistles behind me, no supporting graphics, but it's always good to talk football with the Dirty Bird. So if you're looking for a YouTube channel that gives you guys, instant news and rumors, this is the channel for you. So just to kind of round out the rest of today's video before I get going, because I'm getting the side eye from my girlfriend right now, and so we're gonna be late for her coworker's party or whatever, and I'm gonna hear the end of it. We'll never hear the end of it, but Justin Ellis coming over to Atlanta, and ultimately this defensive line and this whole defense is going to have a bit of a microscope under it because there have been a lot of changes made, right? You go from the defensive line back, where you really start in the front office. You get a new DC and Ryan Nielsen coming over from New Orleans. He brings David Onyemata and Caden Ellis with him. You also signed the vet Calais Campbell. In the draft, you add an edge rusher in Zach Harrison. You bring back Lorenzo Carter after a really strong season, I would say, a year ago. You add a veteran in Bud Dupree. Your big splash signing, one of the biggest free agent signings, period, this offseason for all 32 teams, was the safety Jesse Bates. You trade for Jeff Okudah. You draft Clark Phillips. You fill out the rest of this defense with some smaller level moves. But this is a defense that was bad last year. There's no other really way around it. Had some nice moments here and there, but at the end of the day, it was not a good defense. That's really just the bottom line. And so what did Fontenot and Arthur Smith do? They went out and they pretty much turned this room upside down. A whole bunch of new blood comes into this room. A lot of new faces, from the leadership standpoint to the veteran standpoint to adding 2 new rookies, and more than just 2, right? You drafted a safety out of Alabama in the 7th round. So all in all, a lot of improvements and just a lot of resources and money injected into this defense. And now Justin Ellis joins the squad, and hopefully he can bounce back after last year where he was really not all that productive for New York. He talked to some Giants fans, and they'll probably hit you with the who? Hardly remember him, just one season. But you talk to some Raiders fans and some Raiders and Ravens fans, and I'm sure they're going to have some nice things to say about him. Plus, if Calais Campbell is, ready to roll and whatever the personal issue is gets resolved, he's going to have a former teammate of his, a former Bud, lining up next to him on the defensive line like they did in Baltimore for so many years. That will do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you made it to the end of the video, honestly, shout out to you. It is Friday in July. I know there are a lot more fun things to do right now than talk about Falcons training camp, if we're being real. But you made it all the way to the end of the show, so really appreciate you sticking through with us. No draft today. Very difficult to do an impromptu draft at home, but I can't even think of something off the fly. So we'll just call it a show for now. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. If you made it all the way to the end, though, type me down in the comment section. That way I got a good idea of who the MVPs of the channel are, if you so will.